As we know in Game of Thrones, when Robert Baratheon asks Ned Stark to become Hand of the King and go south, Ned does so, believing that he has to fulfill his duty to the king, even against warnings from his wife and others to not go south. Ultimately, Ned Stark going south, following Robert, leads to Ned Stark's eventual capture and death, but what if Ned Stark refused Robert Baratheon's ask of him to be Hand of the King, instead opting to stay in the north? The cold winds of Winterfell whispered through the ancient halls, carrying with them the weight of a kingdom's burden. Eddard Stark, the Warden of the North, known to most as Ned, stood atop the battlements, gazing over the now snow-covered landscape. His old friend, King Robert Baratheon, had come all the way north from King's Landing with an urgent request to ask Eddard Stark to serve as Hand of the King, so he could help him rule the Seven Kingdoms. Ned's heart was heavy with the decision that lay before him in the crypts below, with Lyanna Stark looking in the background. "I cannot go," Ned said, his voice steady but filled with resolve. "The North needs me, and I cannot abandon it. The North is my home." Catelyn Stark, his devoted wife, stood by his side, her eyes searching his face for any sign of doubt. "Ned, Robert is your friend. He trusts you above all others." Ned turned to her, his expression firm. "The North comes first, Cat. With winter approaching and the whispers of treachery, we must be vigilant. I cannot leave our people unprotected." "But Robert needs someone he can trust in King's Landing," Catelyn insisted. "I know," Ned replied. "I have an idea. Robert's brother, Stannis. He should be Hand of the King. He's a capable, battle-hardened leader, loyal, and he will not shy away from the truth." Catelyn looked at him thoughtfully. "But do you think Robert will actually agree to that?" "I don't know, but I must try." After the grandiose feast at Winterfell, Ned Stark took Robert aside to explain to him that he couldn't leave the North and his home, and that his people needed him. However, he suggested that his brother, Stannis Baratheon, would be loyal and a better hand than Ned could ever be. Robert, angry at first, grudgingly agreed, and the next morning the king and his entourage departed back home. Jon Snow would still go to the Night's Watch, as he didn't feel welcomed with Catelyn around, and being a bastard, knew he would have to find his own path. Although this part changed slightly, Bran Stark being pushed out of the window would still occur. After seeing Jaime and Cersei Lannister doing the deed, leaving him crippled, nobody knew what had happened. But after the similar attempt to finish him off with a knife that was thought to belong with Tyrion Lannister, similar suspicions arose. And with Ned being present for this, events were sure to start snowballing differently. Of course, then the raven from Jon Arryn's widow, Lysa Arryn, arrived soon after Robert's departure from Winterfell. Her message was filled with fear and warning, hinting at the Lannisters' involvement in her husband's death. Ned called his battered men to a council in the great hall of Winterfell, firelight casting long shadows on the walls. "Lysa's words are troubling," Ned said, addressing the gathered lords. "We must tread carefully. The Lannisters are not to be trusted, but we cannot act rashly." Robb Stark, his eldest son, looked at his father with a mixture of concern and determination. "Father, what should we do? Should we prepare for war?" Lord Bolton smiled and said, "I wouldn't mind filleting some Southern Lion scum." Ned shook his head. His face had a slight hint of disgust at the thought of that. "Not yet. We will strengthen our defenses and gather information. The North will remain vigilant. We must be ready for anything." In King's Landing, Robert Baratheon's reign continued, but his reckless behavior and the influences of the Lannisters grew even more dangerous. Stannis was made hand and did the best he could to rule and keep order, but it was not enough on his own. He had grown to dislike his now nephew Joffrey and the way he conducted himself, and found it odd that he looked nothing like himself or Robert. He began doing some research similar to that of what Ned did in the show to find a similar discovery: the Baratheon bloodline. In the Book of Kings, the seed is strong. Stannis had secretly sent a raven of his discovery to Eddard Stark, just in case things went south. He wouldn't dare bring it up to his brother Robert. As strong as Stannis was, he would never directly question his brother to his face. This negligence ultimately was his mistake. House Lannister, and specifically Queen Cersei's machinations, culminated into a deadly boar hunt where Robert was fatally wounded. This led to his death, and the news of his death spread swiftly, reaching Winterfell within days. Ned received the raven with a heavy heart. "Robert is dead," he said quietly to Catelyn, "and with him our hopes for stability in the realm." Catelyn placed a comforting hand on his arm. "What will we do, Ned? How will we protect our family in the north?" Ned's expression hardened. "We must ready for what comes next. The Lannisters will move to consolidate their power. We will gather our forces and prepare for war if necessary." The North remained on high alert as tensions in the realm escalated. Stannis Baratheon declared himself the rightful heir to the Iron Throne, revealing Joffrey's true parentage. Renly Baratheon, this time, since Stannis was closer, dare not interfere and supported Stannis and went to go get the Tyrells to support their claim. The War of Kings was about to begin. Ned called his battermen to Winterfell once more. "The realm is in chaos," he said. "We cannot remain idle. We will support Stannis, for he is the rightful heir. But we must also protect our own interest." Robb stepped forward, his eyes filled with resolve. "Father, let me lead our forces. I can prove myself worthy." Ned shook his head. "No, Robb. You will remain here in Winterfell and protect our home. There must always be a Stark in Winterfell. I will lead our men into battle. The North needs its future safe." Ned Stark led the northern forces south, joining Stannis Baratheon's campaign against the Lannisters. The Northmen's arrival bolstered Stannis' Stormlands army, their disciplined ranks and fierce loyalty a formidable addition. Together they engaged the Lannister forces in a series of brutal battles, stemming from the Trident all the way up until the King's Landing, gaining ground and weakening the Lannister hold on the throne. In King's Landing, Tywin Lannister strategized relentlessly, determined to maintain family's grip on power. He forged alliances and made deals, but in the little time and the combined strength of Stannis and Ned's forces, this proved to be a difficult task. As they marched on King's Landing, the men around him, "These are dark times," Ned said, "but we must not let grief cloud our judgment. We will avenge our fallen, continue to fight for justice." Meanwhile, in Winterfell, Robb took on greater responsibilities, proving himself a capable leader in his own right. He worked closely with Maester Luwin and Sir Roger Castle to maintain order and prepare for the castle for any potential threats against them. Tyrion Lannister, even the keen strategist, did his best to defend the city along with Tywin, and Jaime Lannister, the Kingslayer, led the forces against Baratheons and Starks. Tywin's last desperate maneuvers failed, and when Jaime Lannister was narrowly slain by Ned Stark with the help of Stannis as well, King's Landing fell to Stannis, and ultimately Joffrey was deposed and Stannis Baratheon was declared king. With the Iron Throne secured, Ned Stark returned to Winterfell. However, his thoughts were already turning to a different threat that lay beyond the wall. In the coming months, Jon Snow wrote to his family in Winterfell describing the growing tensions with the Free Folk, led by Mance Rayder. The Night's Watch needed support, and with the realm now at peace, Ned saw an opportunity to aid the Watch. Ned called upon his bannermen once again, now directing them north, this time to muster his forces at the Wall. "Night's Watch needs our help, and it's our responsibility," he declared. "The Wall is all that stands between the cold and the realm." Robb Stark was now more seasoned and responsible and agreed to march with his father this time, which Ned agreed to let the now slightly older Robb join him. The Northern Lords responded with enthusiasm, eager to protect their homeland. The army gathered at Winterfell and marched across the Wall, where they joined the Night's Watch in preparing for the inevitable clash with the Free Folk. The battle against Mance Rayder's forces were fierce and grueling. The combined might of the Night's Watch and the Northern Army clashed with the wildlings in the Shadow Wall, with arrows flying and oil falling down the wall. Ned fought alongside his men, his great Valyrian's greatsword ice cutting through the chaos. Jon Snow, now a rising star within the Night's Watch, displayed his own leadership and bravery, earning the respect of his brothers and the Northern soldiers. After days of relentless fighting, the Northern forces and the Night's Watch emerged victorious, with their superior discipline and skill. Mance Rayder was captured, and the Free Folk were scattered. The Wall stood strong, and the realm was safe once more. With the immediate threat dealt with, the realm entered a time of relative peace. Ned returned to Winterfell, where he focused on rebuilding and strengthening the North. The people of the North flourished under the wise leadership, and he looked to bolster his own house by proposing to the Tyrells Robb Stark's hand in marriage to that of the beautiful maid Marjorie Tyrell, making further connections. In the south, Stannis Baratheon ruled justly, with Sir Davos Seaworth as his hand. The realm was more stable than it had been in years, and there was a sense of hope and renewal. 2 years had passed, and Jon Snow's reputation within the Night's Watch continued to grow. His leadership during the battle against the Free Folk had not gone unnoticed, and he had earned the trust and admiration of his brothers. When the time came to elect a new Lord Commander, Jon was the clear choice. Ned received word of Jon's election with pride. Jon is the right man for the job, he said to Catelyn. He will lead the Night's Watch well. As Jon settled into his role as Lord Commander, the true threat began to reveal itself. Reports of White Walkers and Whites grew more frequent, and the Night's Watch sent urgent messages to Winterfell and King's Landing. Ned called a council in Winterfell, inviting Stannis and other key leaders. The White Walkers are real, and they're coming, he warned. We must prepare the realm for the coming storm, for the fate of humanity. Stannis, though stern and unyielding, recognized the gravity of the threat. We will rally the realm, Ned. The fight for the Iron Throne was just the beginning. The armies of the North, Riverlands, Vale, Stormlands, and Tyrells marched to the Wall, joining the Night's Watch in their final stand against the White Walkers. Daenerys Targaryen, having heard of this threat and the pleas from the great lords of Westeros, sailed to Westeros with her dragons, pledging her temporary support to the cause. The battle for the Dawn, as it came to know, the Long Night, was the most brutal and desperate fight Westeros had ever seen. Jon Snow led the Night's Watch as men fought valiantly alongside each other with the Night's Watch, Northern and Southern. It didn't matter. Everyone was an ally across the realm to fight against the Night itself. Ned Stark, though a bit older now and battle-worn, stood with his people, wielding his greatsword Ice, giving them confidence. The battle was relentless and grueling, and it wasn't looking good. That is, until the arrival of Daenerys Targaryen and her dragons turned the tide of the battle. She melted many Whites and White Walkers, and the combined forces managed to push the White Walkers back in a final climactic confrontation. Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen rushed against the Night King, and together with Jon Snow's Valyrian steel sword and the dragon fire from Drogon, they defeated the Night King together. The battle was over, however, many had perished, including King Stannis Baratheon. The realm, united in victory, temporarily began the arduous task of rebuilding and deciding how to fill the gaps of the power that had been left behind with the death of the king. Ned Stark returned to Winterfell, now a hero not just of the North, but all of Westeros. He knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but with his family at his side and the realm temporarily united, he believed that he could make something work. Now, Daenerys Targaryen, having fought alongside the people of Westeros, gaining their respect in doing so, shifted her focus to her birthright, ruling the Seven Kingdoms. With Stannis gone, and her displaying her care for the realm by using her power and the dragons to help defeat the White Walkers, she won the support of Ned Stark and other key leaders. Not wanting to have a conflict against dragons, as when dragons go to war, everything burns, some type of compromise would need to be made. And Daenerys had gained the respect of the leaders, and the last time Ned had really seen Jon Snow as a boy, he had promised to tell him of his mother's origins. And after the defeat of the White Walkers and Stannis being dead, he decided there could not be a better time. A proposal was made to have Jon Snow, in reality Aegon Targaryen, the son of Rhaegar, heir to the throne, marry Daenerys Targaryen. They would rule the realm together, with the Northern Cold uniting the Fire of Dragons, to serve as a compromise between the realm and Daenerys and her dragons, and House Targaryen and House Stark would unite the realm together. The cold snow with that of dragonfire, and they would rule justly. And so, the Starks, having endured countless trials and tribulations, would go on to continue to be one of the greatest, most influential, and noble houses in all of the Seven Kingdoms. Ned Stark would die happily of old age in the arms of his loving wife, Catelyn Stark.